The galaxy was vast, full of shining stars, immense fleets, and powerful empires. Yet in the edges of its map, countless worlds had been forgotten. Small planets once alive with color and song now lay in silence. Civilizations had faded into shadows. Trade ships passed them by, seeing no profit. Star councils ignored their cries. They were the invisible, the ignored, the ones the galaxy deemed unworthy of attention. On one such planet, Illyria, life struggled against the harsh sun. Its lands were cracked, rivers ran shallow, and the sky seemed endless and empty. The Allari, a gentle race with soft blue skin and translucent wings, lived in quiet despair. They were a peaceful people, devoted to art, music, and family, but survival had become their only goal. Every generation had sent messages into the void, hoping for aid. Every message had returned unanswered. Slowly, hope faded, leaving hearts heavy with sorrow. In a small village, children sat on the dry ground, tracing patterns in the dust. Their wings drooped. Elderly Allari told stories of their ancestors, of cities that once gleamed with crystal towers, of forests that sang with life. "The galaxy does not hear us," an old elder whispered, his voice trembling. "It does not care." The children only nodded, too young to remember the songs, but old enough to feel the weight of silence. Then, one quiet night, a human scouting ship descended from the stars. Its hull gleamed in the moonlight, marked with the emblem of Earth, a symbol the Allari had never seen before. Its engines hummed softly, a sound unlike any they had heard. From the ship, a single figure emerged. Captain Marcus Hale, a human known for going where others feared to tread, stepped onto Illaria's cracked soil. The Allari stared in disbelief. No one had come for them in centuries. "We're here to help," Marcus said simply. His voice was steady, calm, yet filled with a strange warmth. For a moment there was only silence, then whispered murmurs of awe spread among the Allari. Could this really be true? Could someone finally care? Marcus knelt to meet their eyes. "We've seen your messages," he said. "We've seen how the galaxy has ignored you. But we won't. Not anymore." Over the next days, Marcus and his small crew moved among the villages, helping wherever they could. They repaired water systems that had been broken for decades, distributed food and medicine, and taught the Allari new ways to grow crops in the harsh soil. Slowly, hope began to bloom. The children laughed as water flowed into their dried fountains. Parents began to dream again of a future where their families would thrive. Even the elders smiled, some with tears in their eyes. At night, Marcus sat beneath Illyria's twin moons with the Allari Council. They told him of wars that had stolen their youth, plagues that had decimated their cities, and the countless pleas that had gone unheard. Marcus listened, letting the weight of their words settle in his heart. He could feel their pain as if it were his own. "You are not alone anymore," Marcus promised. "Humans will stand with you. We will not let you be forgotten." The Allari looked at each other, unsure if such a promise could truly exist. But in the days that followed, every act of kindness, every repair, every small victory over hunger or sickness became proof. Humans were more than strangers. They were a force willing to defend what others had abandoned. Word of the humans spread across the edge of the galaxy. Other forgotten races began to hope again. Some had resigned themselves to silence, but now they dared to dream of rescue. Somewhere, on a distant planet called Velora, the Sharii, a fragile race enslaved for generations, whispered among themselves. "Perhaps we are not alone," they said. Perhaps the galaxy's blind eye could finally be opened. For Marcus, the work had only begun. He knew the galaxy's powers would not welcome humans meddling in forgotten worlds. He knew danger lurked in the shadow of every system, that pirates and warlords would see humans as threats. But he also knew that hope, once kindled, could not be extinguished. And so, under the twin moons of Illyria, surrounded by the first glimmers of a world awakening from despair, Marcus Hale made a silent vow. He would protect these forgotten races. He would stand where the galaxy had turned away. And he would show the universe what it meant when humanity refused to ignore those in need. For the Allari, and for countless others who had been silenced, the smallest human ship had become a beacon, a promise that even in the darkest corners of space, someone would remember them. The story of humans helping the Allari spread slowly through the outer rim. On worlds long abandoned, whispers of hope began to circulate. For the first time in generations, the Forgotten dared to believe that someone cared. Yet not everyone in the galaxy welcomed the change. In the grand halls of the Intergalactic Council, a group of wealthy and powerful races gathered. Their polished floors reflected their proud faces, but there was fear behind their eyes. "These humans are meddling where they do not belong," said Councillor Draven of the Clear, his voice sharp and cold. "They encourage rebellion among the lesser species. They disrupt our control." Other council members scoffed. "Let them waste their time," said a Vorton diplomat, leaning back in his chair. "No human force can match the fleets of the inner systems. They will fail, and the Forgotten will remain nothing." But humans were not deterred by politics, power, or fear. Captain Marcus Hale and his crew continued their journey, moving from one forgotten world to another. They visited the frozen tundras of Velora, where the Shari huddled in caves after centuries of enslavement. They landed on desert worlds where the Lyrians fought for every drop of water. They arrived at oceanscapes where the tide-borne people barely survived the relentless storms. Everywhere they went, humans offered food, medicine, and protection. Everywhere they went, hope began to bloom. The humans were not just helpers, they were teachers and protectors. They taught sustainable farming, water purification, and basic defense. They shared knowledge long forgotten by these isolated civilizations. But the humans also faced danger. Some galactic powers saw their actions as a threat to the order they had maintained for centuries. Pirates and mercenary fleets began hunting human ships. One night in the Draxon Belt, Marcus and his crew escorted a convoy of civilian transports carrying supplies to a small farming world. The stars above were quiet, peaceful. And then, without warning, plasma fire tore through the convoy. Pirates hired by unknown interests in the inner systems attacked without mercy. The transports burned. Children cried. Parents screamed, and Marcus's crew fought desperately to shield the innocent. Laser blasts tore through metal, and the dark void echoed with the sound of destruction. When the fight was over, dozens of humans had given their lives, and countless civilians had been orphaned or injured. Marcus knelt among the wreckage, holding the survivors close. Their eyes were hollow, filled with fear, loss, and disbelief. "We will not fail you," he said, his voice steady despite the grief. "No matter what happens, we will protect you. We will not let the galaxy ignore you again." That night, Marcus stood alone on the hull of the damaged ship, staring at the stars. He thought of all the worlds he had yet to visit, all the races still in hiding, all the cries unanswered. The galaxy had abandoned them, but humanity had answered. And that answer, he realized, was more powerful than any fleet or weapon. Back on Ilaria, news of the humans' bravery spread among the Ilari. They began to prepare for a future they had never imagined. Children who had once whispered of dreams now shouted with laughter. Families rebuilt their homes, and villages worked together to repair what had been broken. Hope, fragile but fierce, had returned. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy's shadows were long and dangerous. The humans' mission to protect the forgotten races would not be easy. Powerful empires would resist. Mercenaries and warlords would strike. Every rescue, every act of kindness came with a cost. Yet he also knew that courage was contagious. Wherever humans went, others began to stand with them. On a distant ice planet, the Shari began secretly training their youth to defend themselves. On the desert world of the Lyrians, elders taught strategies and survival techniques passed down from their ancestors. Across the forgotten worlds, a quiet resistance grew, not against humans, but against the apathy of the galaxy itself. Marcus watched these developments with pride. He saw the spark of something bigger than himself. Humans were no longer just rescuers. They were symbols of hope, courage, and determination. The galaxy had tried to ignore the forgotten, but humanity had reminded them that even the smallest voice deserved to be heard. And somewhere, in the depths of space, Councillor Draven and other leaders of the inner systems grew uneasy. A single human ship had become the center of a growing movement, one that could not be crushed by threats or wealth. If humans continued, if they stood firm, the forgotten races might rise together, and the galaxy itself might have to take notice. For Marcus and his crew, the danger was real, but so was the cause. They had begun a journey to protect the forgotten, to stand for those who had no voice, to fight when the galaxy refused to act. And in that mission, Marcus felt a truth he had never known before. Sometimes, the smallest acts of courage could change the course of the entire galaxy. Under the light of alien moons, On a quiet night after the battle in the Draxen Belt, Marcus whispered a promise to the stars. "We will rise," he said. "We will protect them. No one will be left behind." And in the hearts of the forgotten, hope stirred once more. The galaxy did not forgive the forgotten for hoping. As humans moved from world to world, lifting small civilizations from despair, the powers of the inner systems began to take notice. They saw Marcus Hale and his crew as more than helpers. They saw them as a threat to the control they had long held. Wealthy empires and ruthless warlords whispered in shadowed halls, plotting to end humanity's interference before it could spread further. On the desert world of Lyrith, a race of stone-skinned beings called the Droni struggled to survive under harsh suns. For centuries, they had mined the planet's precious minerals for mercenaries, receiving nothing in return. When humans arrived, bringing clean water, food, and medical supplies, the Droni could barely believe their eyes. Children played in the streams that Marcus's crew had diverted from hidden aquifers. Elders rebuilt their shelters, whispering gratitude in a language that Marcus could not understand. But peace never lasted long. As the humans left Lyrith, a fleet of black spiked warships appeared on the horizon. They were the Marauders, mercenaries hired by the inner systems to crush any movement that threatened their wealth. Their cannons glowed red, and their engines rumbled like distant thunder. Marcus ordered his crew to prepare for battle, but he knew these were not ordinary pirates. They were trained killers, and they hunted without mercy. The fight began before Lyrith's twin suns had fully risen. Marauder ships swarmed the skies, firing relentlessly. Human vessels, smaller and fewer in number, darted between the attacks, shielding convoys and evacuating civilians. On the ground, Droni families huddled in caves, terrified of the destruction raining down from above. Marcus moved from ship to ship, giving orders, coordinating defenses, and reminding his crew of the mission's purpose. "We protect them," he shouted, over the roar of explosions. No matter what. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded in fireballs that painted the sky orange and black. Marcus watched as brave humans gave their lives to save the helpless. A small shuttle carrying children was nearly destroyed, but crew members pushed it to safety just in time. The Marauders' power was overwhelming, but humanity's courage burned brighter than any weapon. Finally, as the last of the Marauder fleet was forced to retreat, the survivors, humans and Droni alike, gathered on the scarred plains. Dust and smoke filled the air, but so did hope. The humans had protected the innocent, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Droni looked at Marcus with wide eyes. For the first time in generations, they felt safe, and in that safety, their hearts began to dream. The victory, however, came with a price. Many humans had fallen. The crew mourned quietly. Each life lost a reminder of the weight they bore. Marcus stood before the survivors, his expression heavy yet resolute. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "The galaxy will send more. We must be ready. But we will stand. We will not abandon them." As humans and the rescued races rebuilt, news of their courage spread further than Marcus could have imagined. On frozen worlds hidden in asteroid belts and among enslaved colonies, whispers began. "The humans are coming," they said. "They protect the forgotten." Slowly, hope turned to courage, and courage began to shape resistance. But the inner systems were not idle. Counselor Dreven and his allies conspired in secret. They could not allow humans to empower the weak. They saw Marcus and his crew as dangerous idealists, but idealists who could inspire rebellion. Fleets were readied, and agents were sent to sabotage supply lines and sow discord among the rescued races. The galaxy that had ignored the forgotten for centuries now feared the smallest spark of humanity. Meanwhile, Marcus gathered his crew for a quiet meeting on their flagship. "We have to be stronger," he said. "Every world we touch will be a battlefield. Every life we save will be challenged. But we cannot stop. If we do, the galaxy's silence will continue, and the forgotten will suffer. We are their shield. We are their voice." The crew nodded, understanding the weight of their mission. For them, it was more than duty. It was a calling. They had chosen to rise when the galaxy had ignored the helpless, to fight when others had turned away. And they knew that the true test was not just in saving one world or one people, but in inspiring the courage of many. That night, under alien stars that stretched across a black sky, Marcus looked at the maps of the outer rim. Each dot represented a forgotten world, a people in need, a life at risk. He felt both the heaviness of responsibility and the fire of determination. Humans might be small in a galaxy of empires, but their courage, he realized, could be a force the galaxy could not ignore. And as the wind swept across the plains of Lyrith, carrying the cries of children laughing amidst the ruins, Marcus made a silent vow. They would rise. They would protect the forgotten, and they would show the galaxy that even a small race, driven by courage and compassion, could challenge the silence of centuries. In that quiet, powerful moment, the stars themselves seemed to watch, as if waiting to see what humanity would do next. The galaxy was starting to notice. Not through diplomacy or council meetings, but through whispers in hidden stations, tales carried on smuggler ships, and the hope that spread like wildfire among forgotten worlds. Humans were no longer just travelers. They had become a symbol, a warning to the powerful and a promise to the weak. Captain Marcus Hale and his crew traveled to the forested planet of Thalara, where a race called the Solari had been enslaved for centuries by a mining corporation that cared only for profit. The Solari were tall, with green skin and eyes that shimmered like liquid emerald. They had been stripped of their freedom, forced to labor in dangerous mines, and punished for even small mistakes. When humans arrived, the Solari initially feared them, unsure if another power had come to exploit them. Marcus knelt in the dust, holding the hand of a trembling Solari child. "We are here to protect you," he said softly. "No one will harm you while we are here." The child's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time she smiled without fear. The humans worked tirelessly, freeing captives, repairing their homes, and teaching the Solari ways to defend themselves. It was not easy. The mining corporation hired armed guards and mercenaries, striking suddenly, hoping to intimidate the humans into leaving. Marcus's crew fought bravely, but the battle was brutal. Explosions shook the ground, fire lit up the forest, and cries of the wounded echoed through the trees. In the chaos, Lieutenant Kara Voss, a human officer and Marcus's closest friend, threw herself between a group of Solari children and incoming fire. Her body took the full impact, and she fell silently among the burning leaves. Marcus ran to her, lifting her gently into his arms. Her breath was shallow, but her eyes met his. "Keep them safe," she whispered, a small smile breaking through the pain. Then slowly her eyes closed forever. Marcus felt the weight of her sacrifice settle on his shoulders. Every victory came with a cost. Every life saved was paid for in courage and blood. And yet he knew that Kara's bravery would not be forgotten. Her spirit became a symbol for the crew, a reminder of why they fought. The Solari, once fearful and broken, now stood tall. They learned quickly from humans, mastering techniques to protect themselves and their planet. Children laughed in the clearings where they had once hidden, and elders dared to dream of a future without fear. Marcus watched them with pride, but also with a deep awareness of the galaxy's indifference. These victories were small islands in a sea of apathy and cruelty. Even as humans spread hope, the inner systems grew more desperate. Councillor Dreven and his allies sent fleets to intercept them, bribed warlords to attack, and unleashed propaganda to paint humans as dangerous meddlers. Entire worlds began to tremble under the threat of war. Yet the humans did not waver. Marcus reminded his crew daily, "The galaxy may ignore the helpless, but humanity cannot." They would rise where others fell silent. One night, Marcus stood on a cliff overlooking the Solari villages. Fires burned in celebration of their first true freedom. Families sang songs of joy, and children danced under alien moons. Yet Marcus felt a heavy sorrow beneath the pride. Every life saved had a cost. Every battle left scars that could never fully heal. He spoke softly to the wind, to the stars, to the countless forgotten lives still waiting. "We will not stop. No matter the cost, no matter how many we lose, we will protect them." And in the silence that followed, it felt as though the galaxy itself listened. The crew prepared to leave Thalara, knowing that their mission was far from over. Every world they touched, every race they freed became a beacon, and that beacon would attract more danger. But it also inspired courage. Across the edges of the galaxy, enslaved, abandoned, and forgotten races whispered to each other, sharing hope like a secret fire. "Humans will come for us." As the human ships lifted into the sky, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He thought of Kara, of the crew members lost to battles across the outer rim, of the countless lives saved and yet so many still in chains. Humanity was small in this galaxy of empires and fleets, but their courage, their refusal to ignore those in need, was beginning to ripple across the stars. Marcus knew the galaxy would not surrender easily. Shadows of hatred, greed, and fear would rise, and yet every sacrifice, every risk, every act of bravery brought the humans closer to a truth that no power could deny. Compassion and courage could change the fate of countless worlds. Beneath Thalara's twin moons, Marcus Hale made another vow. We will rise for them, we will fight for them, and we will not rest until the forgotten are remembered. For the Solari, for the Alari, for all those who had been abandoned by the galaxy, humanity had become more than protectors. They had become a legend, a living promise that even in the darkest corners of space, hope could shine bright. And courage could inspire a galaxy to wake from its long slumber. The galaxy's silence had been broken. Word of humans protecting the forgotten races spread like wildfire. Across distant stars, enslaved and abandoned civilizations whispered their hope. Humans will come. Humans will protect us. And with hope, courage began to grow. Captain Marcus Hale and his crew received urgent transmissions from multiple worlds at once. The Alari were under attack by a neighboring warlord. The Solari were threatened again by a mercenary fleet. And the Droni faced starvation after their water sources were poisoned by mining corporations, trying to reclaim control. The humans could not ignore a single call. Their ships lifted from Thalara's forests, engines humming with determination, carrying not only supplies and weapons but also a message. The forgotten were no longer alone. On the bridge of the flagship, Marcus studied the star maps, noting each crisis. We cannot save them all at once, he admitted to Lieutenant Kara Voss's replacement, Commander Elias Wren. But we will make sure every race survives. Every call matters. The first stop was Ilaria, where the Alari's twin moons had risen over their repaired cities. Raiders had arrived, hoping to loot the planet while humans were away. But the Alari, trained by Marcus's team, had prepared. Their wings carried them high above the plains, and their newly crafted energy shields glimmered in the moonlight. When Marcus's fleet arrived, they joined the fight seamlessly. For the first time, the Alari were not victims. They were warriors defending their home. The battle was fierce. Plasma fire streaked across the sky. Explosions shook the plains, and cries of fear mingled with shouts of defiance. Marcus maneuvered his ship to shield fleeing civilians while his team coordinated the Alari defenders. By the end of the day, the raiders were defeated. The Alari had fought with courage they never knew they possessed. Marcus's heart swelled with pride, though he felt the heavy weight of the responsibility he bore. Next, the humans moved to Velora, where the Shari had learned to defend themselves with human guidance. There, a warlord fleet had blockaded the ice planet, starving the Shari into submission. The humans launched a daring assault. Ships darted through asteroid fields, and human and Shari fighters struck together. Explosions shattered frozen plains, and the howling wind carried the cries of battle. Marcus led the charge personally, commanding with calm precision, inspiring both humans and Shari to fight for their freedom. By the time the battle ended, dozens of warlord ships lay in ruin, and the Shari were finally free. Children laughed as snow sparkled around them, and families embraced after years of fear. Marcus allowed himself a moment to smile, knowing each life saved was a victory against the cold indifference of the galaxy. But the victories came at a cost. Every battle left scars, and every world they freed carried the memory of pain. Marcus walked among the survivors, offering comfort, guidance, and hope. He reminded them this is only the beginning. The galaxy may still strike, but courage can grow, and together we are stronger. Across the outer rim, humans were no longer just protectors. They were leaders. The Alari, Solari, Shari, and Droni began coordinating, sharing intelligence, resources, and strategies. What had started as individual rescues became a quiet alliance of the forgotten. They knew the galaxy's powers would not stay silent forever. The inner systems would send fleets, spies, and assassins. But they also knew humans had shown them something they had not felt in centuries, that someone cared, and that courage could inspire unity. Meanwhile, in the councils of the inner systems, fear turned to panic. Councillor Dreven and his allies realized that humanity's influence could spark a rebellion that even their armies might not contain. They inspire the weak, Dreven growled. They turn slaves into soldiers, the forgotten into warriors. If we do not act, our control will crumble. Plans were drawn. Fleets were mobilized and a storm began to gather in the galaxy's heart. A storm that would challenge humans and the races they protected like never before. Marcus watched the rising threat with calm resolve. He knew the coming storm would test every lesson, every sacrifice, every ounce of courage. Yet he also knew that humans were capable of something other races often forgot. The courage to stand when no one else would. The will to protect the helpless, and the strength to rise even in the darkest hour. That night, as Marcus gazed at the stars from the flagship's observation deck, he whispered a vow to the countless forgotten lives waiting for salvation. We will rise. We will fight. We will protect you no matter what the galaxy throws at us. And somewhere far across the outer rim, the whispers of hope grew louder. Humanity's promise was no longer a quiet beacon. It had become a call to arms, a rising storm of courage and unity. For Marcus, the road ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and heavy with responsibility. But he understood one truth above all. When humans rose to protect the forgotten, the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had begun to stir. Everywhere humans had brought hope, enemies lurked. Counselor Draven had unleashed his greatest fleets, and mercenaries moved in the shadows waiting to strike. Marcus Hale knew the coming battles would decide the fate of countless civilizations, the lives of the forgotten races, the future of freedom, and perhaps the very balance of power across the stars. The humans and their allies gathered on the neutral world of Ithara, a planet with endless plains and calm skies, where representatives of the Alari, Selari, Shari, Droni, and other freed races met for the first time. It was a strange sight. Races that had never spoken now shared strategies, technology, and hopes. Children from different worlds played together cautiously at first, but soon laughter filled the streets. Marcus watched quietly, his heart swelling. This unity was something the galaxy had never seen. We cannot hide forever, Marcus said, addressing the Council of Allied Leaders. Draven will come for us. The inner systems will not allow hope to grow unchecked. But if we stand together, if we fight for each other, we can survive. And more than survive, we can make them listen. Plans were drawn and defenses were built. Each world contributed what it could. Energy shields, weapon systems, and trained fighters. Humans shared knowledge of strategy, communication, and leadership. Every freed race became a vital link in the chain of resistance. The bond among them strengthened with every passing day. Then the storm arrived. Draven's fleet emerged from hyperspace, vast and dark, like a shadow stretching across the stars. The humans and their allies knew this battle would be unlike any other. Ships fired warning blasts and alarms echoed through Ithara's orbit. Marcus felt the familiar tension in his chest, the same feeling he had felt during every rescue, every fight, every life saved, but it was multiplied. This was no longer just protection. This was survival, justice, and defiance. The battle began with a roar. Laser fire lit up the black void. Explosions shook the surface of planets and starships danced in deadly maneuvers. Marcus commanded from the flagship, coordinating attacks, shielding civilian worlds, and inspiring fighters across the fleet. His voice rang clear over comms. Hull! Hear the line! Protect the innocent. We rise together. On the ground, Alari warriors flew with grace, their wings cutting through enemy fire. Shari fighters moved with precision across icy landscapes, taking out enemy batteries. Droni warriors struck with brutal strength, breaking through siege lines. Every race had grown stronger, braver, and more determined than ever before. But the inner systems were relentless. Ships larger than entire fleets Marcus had seen before fired continuously. Draven's tactics were cruel, designed to crush hope and force surrender. Human crews took heavy losses, but Marcus refused to retreat. He moved through every sector, encouraging, directing, and protecting the weakest ships. The sacrifices of every human, every freed race, fueled the fire of courage across the battlefield. At one critical moment, a massive enemy ship aimed directly at Ithara's planetary core. Marcus piloted his ship straight into its path, risking everything to intercept. Explosions tore through space and his crew held their positions despite the fear and chaos. Finally, with precise coordination from humans and allied races, the enemy ship was destroyed, falling into the atmosphere in a blazing fireball. Victory came at a terrible cost. Entire squadrons were lost, cities were damaged, and countless lives were mourned. Marcus walked among the survivors, his eyes heavy with grief yet bright with determination. "Every life saved is worth the cost," he said softly, "and every lost life will be remembered." As the smoke cleared, the galaxy began to notice. Humans had stood where no one else would. The forgotten races had fought alongside them, no longer silent, no longer powerless. Their courage could not be ignored. Messages of solidarity and admiration came from corners of the galaxy that had long turned away from suffering. The inner systems, though still powerful, realized that hope and unity could not be crushed with fear alone. That night, under Athera's twin moons, Marcus gazed at the horizon. The fires of battle still glowed faintly in the distance, but for the first time he felt a deep, quiet pride. He thought of every child laughing after a village had been saved, every family reunited, every race that had found strength they never knew they had. Humanity had risen to protect the forgotten, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy a new truth. Courage, compassion, and unity could change the course of history. Marcus whispered a vow to the stars, to the fallen and to the living. "We will continue. We will rise. We will protect them, no matter what comes next." The galaxy may have ignored them before, but never again. And somewhere across the black reaches of space, the first sparks of change began to ignite in the hearts of those who had once been silent. The galaxy, vast and indifferent, was awakening to the power of humans, and the forgotten were finally being remembered. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humans and the freed races stood together side by side, their courage shining brighter than the stars themselves. Worlds once abandoned now echoed with life and hope, and across countless systems whispers grew into voices. "We will not be ignored. We will rise." Captain Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the fleets of the inner systems converging for one final assault. They were vast, powerful, and merciless. Draven's forces believed that with sheer might, they could crush this rising alliance of humans and the forgotten. But Marcus had something no empire could buy or build: unwavering courage, unity, and the belief that even the smallest lives mattered. "We fight not for power," Marcus said to his crew, his voice steady, ringing with resolve. "We fight for those who have been silenced, for those the galaxy forgot. Today we rise for them. Today we show that humanity protects the helpless." The allied fleets, composed of humans, Alari, Solari, Shari, Droni, and many others, prepared their formations. Every race had trained, every fighter had grown stronger, and every planet had contributed in its own way. They were small compared to the vast forces of the inner systems, but their unity made them formidable. Courage, Marcus knew, was the greatest weapon of all. The battle began in a blinding burst of light and sound. Ships twisted through the void, firing with precision. Alien landscapes shook as battles raged across planets, and the cries of the innocent echoed above the roar of war. Marcus moved between sectors, coordinating attacks and defenses, inspiring fighters with his presence. Every human crew, every freed race pushed themselves to the limit. They fought not for glory, not for conquest, but for the lives of those who had never known protection. Amid the chaos, Marcus remembered the faces of those he had saved: the Alari children laughing beneath the twin moons of Ilaria, the Solari families dancing after their liberation, the Shari standing tall on the ice plains of Velora, and the Droni rebuilding their homes from scorched earth. Every life mattered. Every act of courage mattered. When the inner systems unleashed their most devastating weapon, a massive warship designed to obliterate entire fleets, Marcus and his crew did not falter. They coordinated a daring attack, weaving through laser fire, protecting Allied ships and striking with precision. Explosions tore through space, and for a moment hope seemed fragile. But humans had learned to rise when all seemed lost. With courage, teamwork, and sacrifice, they destroyed the weapon before it could claim countless lives. Victory came slowly. The inner system's forces began to retreat, their confidence shaken by the unexpected unity and resilience of the humans and the freed races. On countless planets, enslaved and forgotten peoples celebrated as news of victories spread. For the first time in centuries, they knew that someone would stand for them. They were no longer invisible, no longer ignored. Marcus watched the fleets move through the stars, exhausted but proud. His crew, battered and bruised, stood with him, knowing that their sacrifices had not been in vain. "We did it," said Commander Elias Wren quietly. "We've changed the galaxy." Marcus nodded, eyes scanning the stars. "No," he said softly. "We've reminded the galaxy what it means to care, what it means to protect the helpless. That is the real victory." Across the liberated worlds, the once forgotten races began to rebuild. Schools reopened, families reunited, and communities thrived under the protection and guidance of humans who refused to abandon them. What had begun as scattered acts of compassion had become a movement, a living proof that courage, empathy, and determination could challenge empires and ignite hope across the galaxy. Counselor Dreven, witnessing his fleet's retreat and his power weakening, realized too late that he had underestimated the smallest of sparks. Humanity's rise had shown the galaxy that strength was not measured by weapons alone, but by heart, by unity, and by the courage to stand when no one else would. Under Alaria's twin moons, Marcus Hale finally allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. Children laughed in the distance, elders shared stories without fear, and the air was filled with music and life once more. He remembered the faces of his fallen crew, the sacrifices made in battles across countless worlds. Each life lost had been a step toward this moment, a part of the cost of changing the galaxy. He whispered a vow to the stars. "We will always rise for the forgotten. We will always protect them. No one will be left behind again." The galaxy, vast and indifferent for centuries, had begun to change. The humans had proven that even one race, small and unassuming, could ignite courage, compassion, and hope in the hearts of millions. And as the stars shone brightly above, reflecting on the liberated worlds below, it became clear that a new era had begun, an era where the forgotten were no longer silent, where courage could challenge empires, and where humanity stood as the protector of all who had ever been ignored. In the end, it was not the fleets, the weapons, or the power of empires that mattered most. It was the heart, the human heart, that rose to protect the helpless, and in doing so, changed the galaxy forever. The stars whispered a new promise that night. The forgotten will never be forgotten again.